Hey, welcome back to another episode of Elm Elaborates. I got here Ryan Bono with me, and today we're doing Triple B Building Budget Breakdown. We are going to talk about the highs, what we spend a lot of money on, and the lows, and what our Lowe's vendors, our Lowe's concerns are about when we go into buildings.
Yeah.
As always, let's talk about where we spend our most money at. Where's that, Ryan?
You know, it's easy to say it always depends, but one thing that is always expensive is our storage hallways and doors.
Correct.
So the actual units where you roll the doors up, your hallways, basically they form the hallways and all the little interior walls. Storage is just expensive. Steel is expensive. The labor to install this stuff, pretty expensive. It takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And the door assemblies with all the hinges and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it's a lot of steel, it's a lot of weight, it's a lot to ship, it's a lot to track, all these fasteners, all this stuff. I would say that's probably usually going to be our most expensive line item in a budget, depending on the condition. But sometimes it could be the roof.
Yeah,
but I would say the storage hallways and doors is going to be either... It's going to be in the top three most expensive things.
I would agree on that. Definitely in the top three. It is definitely one of those where we have the trade come in early during our site walk, try to get that estimate as soon as possible because we know we're going to pretty much form the budget around the top three.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we have our numbers, or we have our CTJ meetings, like, okay, how much are we really spending here? And then how much can we save there?
Yeah.
We definitely do not want that to come with any change orders, so we try to nail that one down pretty quick and early on.
Yeah, and if we change the layout a little bit, usually it doesn't result in a very big change order.
Correct.
But if we can, if there's existing walls and stuff, there's no point of taking down a wall and putting back a wall. And if there's a bunch of existing walls that we can utilize, then it will save us on our storage hallways and doors, and that's why we aim to utilize a lot of the existing walls.
Yeah, and even the option to go to swing doors. That's another option that we look at sometimes. It's like, okay, do we want to go to swing doors to save some money here? And look at that as options. I love that one.
Yeah, and we don't have to do the whole project with swing doors, right?
Correct,
we can just do like a back area that's not going to be utilized that much. Maybe it has like not a lot of head height clearance, so swing doors are better for that location anyway. But yeah, we can do 10% of the project in a swing door or 20% in swing door and save some money there, especially if it's a tighter budget.
Yeah. So I would say a second runner up or very close top contender with our storage hallways and doors is going to be our roof.
That's right.
Especially just depending on the square footage, right? It's like roof, you spend a lot of money there.
Yeah, and I could go on days and days about the roof. So the quick of it is, if you have a 90,000 square foot building and it's multi-level, that doesn't mean you have 90,000 square foot of roof. Your footprint might only be 40,000 square foot of roof.
Yeah.
And your roof price is going to be dependent on your actual roof footprint. But we usually track our numbers, our rough estimates, our price per square foot is based on the actual storage facility itself. So if we have a 90,000 square foot facility, a lot of times our price per square foot is based on 90,000. But this is an area where we have to tweak because it depends on the actual roof size. Now, it is possible to have a 90,000 square foot facility and have a 90,000 square foot roof.
Correct.
That would all be a single level building. So basically, you have several different options when you're roofing over an existing structure. You can sometimes literally roof over the existing roof. That's usually acceptable in the range of 2 existing roof layers you can roof on top. The problem with that is you can be locking in existing moisture if the roof has gone bad, and you're adding more weight. So you always want to do what's called a core sample and core into the roof, see how many roof layers you have. What is the old roof? Sometimes they literally just put roofing membrane down, didn't secure it, and put rocks on top of it. So that's called a ballast roof, extremely heavy. They use what they call river rock. So hopefully they actually took a giant vacuum. It's actually pretty awesome. It's a truck. It's a vacuum truck where they come and they literally vacuum off the river rock. And then you can go on top. You don't want to go right on top of the rock. It's just a ton of weight, and your next roof is going to be like this because you're going over rock. So that's an option. You can roof over the existing roof. Another option is to tear off the existing roof completely and then go back with new installation and new roof, that's typically your most expensive option. And we have done that. It is very expensive. That can easily be, depending on the facility, it could be $700,000 to $900,000. So yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow. When you have too many existing roofs, too much moisture there, too much weight, and you got to tear it all off. There's other options too, like doing a silicone coating. Those usually, while they come with longer warranties, they usually don't last as long. It's always nice to go back with a new roof. That's our ideal scenario. If the roof's not in good shape, to go back with a new roof. There's sometimes we get away with maintenance, touching up the seams, whether we add, coating on the seams, or we do what's called a cover strip on the seams, which is a really awesome, basically very adhesive roofing tape. A lot of options. We do bring our roofers out and have them price all these options, but typically it's not going to be a cheap line item.
No, and I would say roofer is probably one where I see a lot of change orders, just because there's still like a lot of unknown variables, especially if you're going to rip off, is the fascia good? Is the soffit good? Like, what are we doing here? So that
the decking,
yeah. I mean, we ripped off one, and we thought that we were going to be good with the decking, and we ended up I think we estimated for like 60% of the decking to be replaced. Ended up having to replace all of it. That was a big. That hurt a little bit, So roofing is definitely one of those big line items that you have to put that variance in there and keep track of it, and almost go for worst case scenario.
Yeah,
just to make it like in your budget.
Obviously, part of storage is keeping stuff climate controlled and dry.
Yeah.
So we don't want roof leaks,
No.
throughout the whole project. I mean, we did get lucky on Lexington, North Carolina, where we did hardly anything there on that roof. I mean,
some pitch pockets. I think
that
was really it.
Yeah. So for the HVAC, where it goes through the roof, there's something called a pitch pocket. Basically, you make a new flashing, and then you pour pourable sealer in there. It seals up all of your more flexible connections. So roofing usually, not for Lexington, but usually, it's probably one of the top 5 most expensive line items on a budget.
Yeah,
typically.
I would say so. Yeah, we definitely have another project coming up that we're like, are we going to touch the roof? And then, it all depends on how long do we think that roof is going to last, right?
Exactly.
Like, is it going to last 5 years? Is it going to last 10 years? And luckily for us, in-house, we have the roof expert, as you can tell. This guy loves talking about roofs, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He will talk your ear
They're
off
interesting.
I'm learning a lot about roofs. But, so, like, those are all things that we weigh when we look at this and to consider our budget. Like, okay, can we save some money here on the roof if we think it's going to be good for another 5 or 10 years, or what's that going to look like down the line? Okay, so we got definitely 1 and 2, maybe,
Yeah.
I would say another, let me just think here. Another top 3. Like, if we're going top 3, we're going to have a tie between electrical and HVAC.
Yeah.
I mean, those definitely, MEPs, those two are, because rooftop units are expensive. HVAC is expensive. The new switch to the
new refrigerant
that is becoming
price of copper.
Yep, the price of copper.
So yeah, I mean, you were talking about. Let's just dive right into HVAC. You were talking about RTUs versus split systems. So RTUs, you basically have your condenser and air handler together on top of the roof. It's called a RTU rooftop unit.
That's it.
Now, when you install RTU, you have to cut a hole in the roof and support it structurally because you're putting all that weight on the roof. The nice thing about RTUs, though, is you don't have to run what's called a copper line set from the air handler to the condenser because it's all together. It comes packaged. That's why it's also sometimes called a packaged unit. So that saves you costs on copper, but the units themselves are a little bit of a premium. Now, you can go with the other option, which is your split unit. So your air handler hangs inside the facility, and that blows the air. And then your condenser, the thing that dispels the hot or cold air out into the outside, that could be up to, 100, 200, 300 feet away. And so when they're that far away, when the condenser's that far away, that's how far your copper line set has to go.
That's money.
Yeah. And it's not just the copper, it's the insulation on the copper line. Because if you don't insulate it, it's going to drip. So, because you're going to have literally condensation. So you got to factor all that stuff in. we also don't want to put condensers all over the roof right above the air handlers, because then all the electrical has to run to that point. So it's this fine balance of like, what's the most reasonable option for this project. And I think a lot of times we do the split system,
Yep.
and we just try not to run really long copper line sets. But there's other projects that we're doing right now that RTU is the more feasible. Especially if there's existing ductwork that came from an RTU, and the RTU's curb is it's called a curb, but I'm trying to explain it in layman's terms. It's basically the structure within the roof system itself. If that's already there, then it's nice to reuse the RTU format with the curb and the ducting, because then you could just plug and play.
Yeah.
If it's relatively the same tonnage.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, it's probably harder to replace a RTU though, right? Like when we try to find something to replace it, that's why it's usually easier to go with the split system.
Yeah.
Because those units are a little bit easier to find.
Yeah, they're right off the shelf.
Yeah.
Typically, they don't have to adapt to the existing curb. You can just kind of hang them wherever you want and kind of face them wherever you want. Yeah, I would say they both have their
advantages.
Their pros and cons. I think usually we go with the split system for the ease, for the flexibility and the ease of installation. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely installations. That's a big part too.
Yeah.
As well. Oh, okay. So then we go into electrical. Electrical is, I mean, depends on how much demo you got going too, right? You got to make safe, so that plays into the factor of electrical.
Yeah, I would say the demo has a lot to do with it, and your finish, your overhead. Like if you have a drop ceiling, if we're utilizing and saving the drop ceiling, the price of the electrical is going to be much more, because the guys have to run the wiring, bay by bay, basically popping out ceiling tiles and ducking underneath the ceiling grid. That costs a lot more from a labor perspective. They just can't move nearly as fast. They can't be up on scissor lifts, kind of just running wire that way. Yeah, I mean, the existing service has a lot to do with it. The condition of the existing MDP, the main distribution panel, the breakers, the interiors, all that kind of stuff. It's just what's existing sometimes, and what we get is just so hodgepodge that to understand what's even going on would take 2 weeks. So it just makes more sense to go back with all new.
Yeah.
We love to utilize stuff if we can, but there's a headache. There's a price to pay when you're dealing with headaches of that magnitude, especially when it's a building built in the 1920s. They've added on here, they've added on there. All these panels are crossing, and nothing's labeled. I mean, you have
your garage is bad.
Yeah,
you go into some of these buildings, you have no idea what's labeled.
No idea, and some of the panels are hidden.
Yeah,
and there's literally 200 to 300 circuits. So like for you to understand what breakers on what outlet, like it would take forever. And it's usually all older recalled panels, not very good stuff to utilize anyway. So that's why recently we've been going back with all new. I would say that still since COVID, there has been a shortage on breakers, and the cost, that's kind of like, we're talking about mainly the cost. The cost for some of these breakers and the internal, what they call guts, basically the internal switchboard, long lead times, high costs.
Yes. My big thing is the lead time. It is like you have to nail that down so you can get those ordered. And I feel like electrical, especially as we're going through the permitting, like that's one of those things that are like, we have an idea, like we're probably 60 to 70% there. We haven't nailed everything down. So that's where it's like, oh man, these lead times, we need to figure this out now so we can get those breakers ordered. Yeah. So I think it almost took like 2 or 3 months to get out there.
Yeah. I mean, the one for Kernersville took 5.5. Yeah. So I agree with you, because if we say to the engineer, hey, we need X, Y, and Z, right? He's like, okay, that's 800 amps of service you need. Okay, we order a panel for 800 amps, and it's like, oh wait, we want an elevator and we want outside lights and all that stuff. He's like, well, then you need 1,000 amp service. And it's like, oh well, we only ordered 800. Yeah. That's a mistake you can't afford, right? Like HVAC, it's like, oh, we want one more HVAC for, for the office. No, you just buy another HVAC, a 2-ton HVAC, and then you're off to the races. 1.5 tons. That's an extra $4,000. You don't have to worry about anything. But for electrical, if you start adding things like more HVACs,
Yep.
then you start pulling from that overall amperage amount, and then you could really get into some trouble. And then you have to pay for re-engineering and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I would say electrical is very expensive, and it's a trade that is rightfully so. It's an expensive trade. It's expensive on the labor side.
Yeah.
The electricians have gone to school and really are well educated.
Know their stuff.
Yeah.
So definitely, those are our top three. We got roofing, HVAC, and then
electrical, storage.
Storage. Yeah.
So that top four.
I'm kicking electrical off. Honestly,
You're kicking it
I'm
off?
kicking electrical off. I definitely now that I'm thinking about all the projects, HVAC is definitely above electrical.
Let me ask you about this one.
Oh boy.
Fire sprinkler.
Oh man. Yeah, we could talk about top four again.
Yeah.
I'd say that's right up there.
If the building does not have a fire sprinkler system,
that is going to be right. That's going to be the top three. That's going to be the third.
So we budget for a little bit over $4 a foot for HVAC, and fire sprinkler is relatively close.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about your fire sprinkler system, your fire alarm system, civil contracting,
Any type of civil work. Yep.
which civil contracting is basically subsurface work to pull utilities and the backflows associated, and the ominous tap fee.
Yeah, the tap fees associated.
So that's one scope of work that really, to accomplish it and to pass your final inspection, is really five big line items. All in, you're well over $4 a square foot.
Yeah. And once again, the drop ceiling comes into play there, right?
Exactly.
It's like you want them to be able to get in there and get out of there as soon as they can.
Yeah.
The more they have to fight around the drop ceiling or fadango around anything, that's just going to eat into your charge, and it's going to go up.
Yeah. I would say, if you, I mean, it's not every almost every project we have to do something with the HVAC or electrical. Not every time do we have to do a deep,
a brand new
sprinkler system.
Yeah. Sometimes
it's just refurbishing some of the existing sprinkler heads and doing a test on the internals to make sure nothing's completely rusted out or something. So sometimes we can get away with just $20,000 on a project if it has a really nice sprinkler system. But we're probably talking $250,000 for a 40,000 square foot facility. Or if you're talking an 80,000 square foot facility, you're probably talking about 300s.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money.
It's a bit. Yeah. A little bit of change. Okay, so top five. We got top five.
The thing about fire sprinkler is it's a backup. It really is. It's not a primary system. It's not like HVAC where you use it every day. It's not like electrical where you use it every day.
Yeah.
It is a safety mechanism that is very important, but it doesn't really add to the customer's experience, right?
Correct. It helps with insurance.
It helps
have your premium lower, but
and the value of the property. It does help with that. But as a customer experience, like paint, if you spent $300,000 on paint outside, inside, you paint all the doorknobs, like you paint whatever you'd walk in there and you'd be like, wow,
this is a nice place, and I'm going to store my stuff in here and walk out. Here's my unit. I'll see you guys later.
Fire sprinkler, you spend $300,000. Nobody even notices.
No one's even gonna be like, hey, what's that?
Except the fire marshal, they'll notice.
Oh yeah, they'll let you know real quick.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. It's a necessary evil, but it doesn't add to the pizzazz of the building.
Pizzazz, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I mean, now we talked about our top five, right? These are pretty expensive guys here.
Yeah,
and vendors, and so let's talk about our bottom tier. Where are we sitting at with
bottom tier? I would say the office build out usually isn't very expensive.
Okay, yeah.
The metal studs, the drywall, the granite countertops, the flooring, like that, you can do a whole office that really brings a lot of light to a facility for, 12 to 18 grand. And and you can make something that's like somebody could appreciate it.
Yeah.
For let's call it 15 grand, and somebody's, comes in like, wow, this is awesome. I think that's money well spent. A nice beautiful office, very welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's a lower price point. Another one that's pretty low sometimes is paint. We
Definitely sometimes.
Yeah.
Paint, I feel like, is one of those things that we just keep adding onto.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have an idea of roughly what it's going to be. Like, hey, we're going to paint our blue and this here and that. But, as we do these walks and punch walks and owner site visits and all that, like, we're like, what about doing the hallways?
Yeah.
What about doing this? What about doing this? Like, we can.
Yeah.
We can.
It's nice to keep that in line because, yeah, especially floor paint is really expensive because you have to use like forklift grade paint so that when people are storing their stuff, it doesn't get marked up like really bad. So
because then it becomes a maintenance issue. It's like a lot of these things. It's like, okay, is this going to be a maintenance issue down the road? Because obviously we're going to have to maintain it too.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
It looks great for the first 5 days, but on day 45, it looks terrible. It's like, now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly correct.
Yeah.
I mean, so paint could be one of those lower items. We have paid on Gastonia, we had to paint a lot. Like, it just did not look good, so we painted a lot of areas there. So that was a higher number there. But I think Lexington, we got away with a pretty small paint budget.
Yeah, and it definitely just depends on the facade of the building. Like if it's a brick, and we love brick. Brick is beautiful.
Who doesn't love brick?
Like, we're not going to paint brick, but like if there's some interior walls that or a different cream or something like that we can paint up and kind of bring some energy into the room.
Yeah.
I like doing that.
I agree.
I love it. I love doing that. And then plumbing. Plumbing's probably another, we don't have too many bathrooms. We probably usually have one manager's bathroom or one bathroom for facility, unisex. So plumbing is another lower item. It doesn't get that expensive with the backflows and all that. So,
yeah. No, the domestic water.
Yeah.
The backflow for that's probably like $2,500.
Yeah.
So plumbing is something that's very. I mean, if you call a plumber to your house, everyone knows that's expensive. But for what we do relative to our projects, since we're only dealing with like 2 toilets and a mop sink, it's definitely one of our lower line item budgets.
Correct. Yeah. Because plumber's just gonna do that for the whole building. Doesn't matter on square footage really. Especially for what we do for self-storage, it doesn't require that we have more than one bathroom.
Exactly.
Or anything like that.
Yeah.
Depending on jurisdictional code.
Yes.
Of course. What else we got on the low? So we got 3 there. We got paint. We got plumber. Did we say someone else? I thought you said someone in the beginning. Office build out.
Office build out.
Office build out. Thank you, producer Hannah.
Yes.
So who else? We got 2 more that we could fill this bottom 5 with. Let me think.
Are elevators cheap?
Heck no. Heck no. That might have been in a top 5 contender, but we don't do elevators on every project.
It's kind of like fire sprinkler.
Yeah.
But we can dive into elevator just briefly. The elevator itself is expensive. However, there's something called an elevator shaft.
I was going to say that elevator needs to go in something.
Yes. Elevator shaft and the equipment room. If we have to build an equipment room for the elevator, there's something called a machine room-less elevator. But those are more expensive. So pros and cons there. Yeah, I would say your elevators are, if you're talking about, excavating for the pit, pouring the pit, installing the elevator, the elevator shaft, building that all out, I'd say you're probably looking at $250,000 roughly, give or take.
Yeah.
And that's for just traveling one additional floor. So yeah, that's pretty expensive. I would say that's if you had to add an elevator and a fire sprinkler system, that would be a pretty substantial project with some big numbers on it. And
then if you bring an elevator into it, now you're looking at a whole separate set of inspections with state inspections.
Yes.
Right? It's not just your building, not just your municipality safety inspections. Now you're bringing in the state inspector to come look at your, which if you've listened to our podcast before, we talk about fair season and you want to make sure your elevator is not going to finish up anytime around fair season. So,
that's right.
Yeah. Go back and you also have a
bunch of additional electrical, right? You have to bring you have to bring a big home run from the elevator to the panel. You have to have the sump pump. You have to have
a ladder in there. Different lights requirements. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a whole
slew of things that come in with the elevator. So I know we were talking about things that weren't expensive, but that's a big
now I'm
line
up to 6.
Yeah.
Now I'm up to 6 on the expensive side. Where does it get cheap?
Where does it get
where
cheap?
do we save money?
Seal coating our parking lots.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's pretty affordable.
Yes.
So to go back with all new asphalt, we're talking, that's a big number.
That's a huge number.
It's so much different from seal coating to going back with new asphalt. So a seal coat is essentially a thick paint on the parking lot. It really is. So it's a tar-based, liquid applied sealant that, over your existing asphalt parking lot, if it's been beat up by the sun for many years and the rocks, the aggregate is starting to come out, it's a good option to seal coat your parking lot. It makes it look very nice.
Makes it almost look new.
Yeah, it makes it look pretty new.
Yeah.
You put new striping on the, the parking spaces, and it really does a good job for the first 4 to 8 years.
Yeah.
The more traffic you have driving on it, the harder it is on the seal coat, especially if those rocks or the aggregate on the existing are kind of breaking off. Then as people turn it, kind of grinds it into the seal coating. So you want to make sure that you don't have a bunch of loose rock before you seal coat. But I think that's something that for the value, for the price, you get a lot of value out of it.
Absolutely.
I would say that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Okay. I can agree with that. I won't put that on there.
One item that is expensive, but if you do it in the right quantity, is nice.
Oh, talking about asphalt still?
No.
Oh, is this a question?
I was queuing it out.
Is this a riddle?
I was queuing it out.
Is this a riddle?
Something we did at Lexington and Kernersville.
Okay.
That's on the outside of the building.
Okay.
It's kind of expensive if you do a lot of it, but if you do...
we're talking about handrails?
Storefront.
Storefront. Oh, gosh. I was going to say handrails. Storefront, yes. I do love a good... our storefront, just adding that little kiss. That's what I feel like. It's a little kiss on the building. A little exterior, like, boom. It really brings, like, the outside in. A lot of natural light coming in.
Yes.
It's very transparent. Like, oh, what is that building about? Oh, they do storage in there.
Yeah.
Because now we're looking at our faux doors. You can see inside the building, kind of like, okay, they're all about storage in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a nice little touch that you can add that's relatively not expensive.
Yeah. And if you have existing windows that are single pane glass, when you add the storefront and the IGUs, the insulated glazing units, you're increasing your efficiency, which actually saves you money in the long run because you're not losing all your heat out the windows. So
absolutely,
I'm a big proponent of storefront.
You don't say.
Yeah, I like the way it looks.
Have you done it in the past?
I was a glazing contractor in Los Angeles.
You dabbled. You dabbled in it.
I love it. I just think it adds a lot to the buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, especially getting rid of those old windows and just putting like nice old crisp.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 5, maybe 4, 5, and one more because you added one at the top, so now you got to add one at the bottom. We could do miscellaneous labor, but
I got one in mind.
Ooh, another riddle?
Another riddle.
Please do. I'm excited about these riddles.
It lights up and it lets you know storage is there.
Ooh, we're talking about signage.
Signage.
Not always does it light up, though.
Yes.
Depending on where you're at.
Yeah, if they let us
sometimes
illuminate
they will not let you.
Yeah. I think we found a great signage contractor who gives us very reasonable prices on really nice looking signs. Some of them are really big, and I'm like, that's going to cost a lot of money, and I get the price, and I'm like, hey, this is worth it.
Every time I've gotten those prices from our vendor, I'm like, not bad.
Yeah.
Like, thank you.
Yeah.
This is where I can save.
Yeah, exactly. And we priced them out with other contractors, and they do a great job. We use them a lot on our projects. And I just think it adds a lot, and it's a necessary evil to what we do. We want to let people know that we're there, we're open, and and the good part about that is too, we don't have to pull the signage permits. Our contractor does it for us, and that's a load off. Almost every jurisdiction makes you pull a standalone sign permit, so we usually have them do that because they're just better at it than we are.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get behind that number 6 there. Okay, so just taking a step back, it looks like a lot of our beautification, really bringing life into the building are our low numbers, right? Like our lower vendors.
The lower cost, higher value,
Correct.
higher customer experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the ones were like hidden behind the walls, but are providing climate
Essentials.
control, essentials, you know,
Functionality.
you're paying more. So
Yeah.
we could easily turn these facilities into something that looks nice, right? For pretty cheap.
Yeah.
But our idea is to turn this into a whole experience, this functionality of bringing in new HVAC, electrical, fire sprinkler, just really bringing value to the building, not just doing the outside, hey, this looks nice now.
Yeah, it's nice to know when we walk off a project, like the HVAC is new, the roof is new. Like, obviously, we're trying to save costs where we can, but if we have to go back with all new, we know that when we walk off that job site, we're good for 8, 10, 12 years. I mean, that's a good feeling. That it really is. Yeah, and we know that, okay, if we do have a brand new roof and something's leaking, it's like, well, it's under warranty and it's going to get taken care of.
That is probably my favorite part. Is it under warranty?
Yes.
And that answers a lot of questions, especially as you wrap up the project and it is 1 or 2 years into it. It's like, it's covered.
Yeah.
It's covered. Ain't got to worry about it. It's covered.
Yeah. I love that more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for episode 8. We're talking about the triple B.
BBB.
Building budget breakdown. That's it. Thanks for watching Elm Elaborates. We'll see you on episode 9 where we don't know what we're talking about yet.
That's right.